Have you ever had the problem of planting a shrub or a tree someplace in your landscape and then a couple years later deciding you really didn't want it there after all? Well, that's the case with this Weigela shrub. Now, Weigela is a summer flowering shrub. It has all of its leaves off right now. Now's a good time to be moving it. In fact, now's a good time to transplant a lot of trees and shrubs. In the late winter, before the roots require a lot of water from summer heat and sun, and before the leaves need a lot of support from water. Now, in preparing to move any kind of tree and shrub, the first step is to dig the hole where the tree or shrub is going to go into. And we've already done that. And that hole needs to be about twice the diameter of the root ball. Same depth, though. You certainly don't want to bury it any deeper than where it's already growing or the level it's already growing at. And make sure that with that depth that you dig out and the soil you dig out of this hole, that you have a tarp or a big sheet of cardboard or something to lay the soil on so you can easily dump it back in the hole when you're finished. Now, what we're doing is preparing to ball and burlap this shrub so we can get as much of an undisturbed root ball as possible and carry it over to the other planting site. After you've dug out around most of the hole, you need to round off the ball a little bit before you wrap it in burlap. And that's what we're doing now. We're undercutting it just a bit before we try to detach it from where it's planted here in the hole and try to get all the roots out.
It looks like it's just about ready to bring out of the hole too, Sue. And I think now we need to gently put our shovels underneath the ball and rock it back and forth to loosen those roots that are still there and try not to break those roots off. And after we've done that, we have a nice shaped ball of soil there around that root system. And although we are just going to move a very short distance, we still need to protect that. So we're going to wrap that with burlap and tie it loosely to transport it to our new location. And I want to ask Terrell to go over and help us. This is Terrell Stripling, who is one of the gardeners out here that help us maintain our Oklahoma gardening studio. And so Terrell, if you'll come and help me lift this out. And I think that's an important thing that you do need to keep in mind, that this ball of soil can really be heavy. And if you have too large of a ball, it's very difficult for one person to handle it. So you'll probably want to call someone in to help you lift this out and put the burlap underneath it. Now we're going to pull the ball over and slip the burlap underneath it and then pull it back the other way while we gently pull the burlap over. So then we can wrap the burlap up around the ball and tie it with some string, enough at least to keep it together while we move it to the new location. So Terrell, if you'll hold that, I'll get our string.
If you don't have burlap on hand and you're just moving at a short distance, you could use some other material too, but make sure it's something strong enough. A plastic sack would not be strong enough to hold the whole root ball unless you give it some support from underneath.
And I'm going to start by taking this string and wrapping it around the burlap to hold it good, and then go underneath it to also hold it in the bottom.
The large nurseries ball and burlap trees, and with the burlap they can hold them in place for some time and keep them watered until they are transplanted to their final destination. One point I want to make is the twine that they're using does not decompose. It's a polyester type twine. And so if you buy a tree that's balled in burlap and have it transplanted to your home, make sure that you cut that twine because it could restrict the roots over time because it does not decompose.
Now, one of the things also about moving a tree or a shrub is that you have to use a little bit of, I guess, common sense in the process. Obviously, if one is much too large for you to handle, you want to bypass that task yourself and call some professionals in to do it. But in this case, this one certainly is not too large for at least two people to work with. And so we should have fairly good success in doing this. And now that I've got my string wrapped around it several times, both underneath and around the side, then I'll tie this string tightly so that we can hold that soil ball together till we get it moved to our new location. Now again, we need to keep in mind that the soil that we have contained within this ball is really pretty heavy. And so you also need to take some caution in the way you handle this, not to injure yourself. And that's why I like to have someone to help me. If you could I see the board there a minute, Sue?
Mm-hmm.
If it is a ball that's much too large or much too heavy for you to handle, you can get a board and slip underneath it, and then use that board to help slide it up out of the hole till you get it to where you want it. And in this case, we're just going to pick it up, board and all, put it in our wheelbarrow, and take it to our new location. So now that we've got it dug, we've got it balled, we've got it burlapped, now we can take it down and put it in its new home. So let's go down and replant this thing.
As I mentioned before, we got our planting hole ready ahead of time, and our topsoil we put in one pile, and the deeper soil we put back in piles back over here. I want to talk a little bit about amending planting holes. If you have a good soil to begin with, it's really not necessary to fill in your planting hole with peat moss or compost or whatever. The roots will do just fine in the existing soil. Again, it's important to have a wide enough root ball for the mass to grow into. But if you have a very poor soil and it tends to crust over badly, you might want to top dress it with a bit of good compost or peat moss. And they brought in the balled and burlapped weigela here, and the next step is to measure it before putting in the hole.
We want to be sure that the depth of the hole is approximately the same depth as the ball that we have here, maybe just a slightly more shallow in fact. And on our ball here we've got it looks like about 10.5 inches of soil. So now I want to measure also the hole here, and it looks like we have about a 12.5 or 13 inch hole there. So we're probably going to need a couple of inches of soil in there. Okay, let's measure that again now and see. That's probably going to be about right. One of the things I like to do also before I put the tree into the new hole is make a little bit of a dish where I'm going to set it there and get some of that topsoil also around the edge of that ball as we put in there, and have a little depression there for this thing to go into. So like we used our board earlier to take it out of the hole, then Terrell and I are going to also use the board to slip it down into the new hole, and it works real well there. Really saves on the back. And after we have it, then we want to position it in the position that we want it. And sometimes it's really important to look at the trees and the shrubs that you're moving and be sure that you've got the side facing a particular location that you want. You know, on this one it doesn't really make that much difference because it is a shrubby type of growth habit here. But if you've got a tree or a shrub or a plant that has a particular growth pattern to it, or an angle that you want to either put out of the wind or into the wind, you need to consider that also, and then move it around, because once you have this thing set in your hole, then you want to start filling it in with soil and then forget about it. So now we want to cut the string from the top of the ball and we're just going to leave the burlap in the hole here because it will deteriorate, but we'll pull it back, put it down into the hole there, and then as we put the soil around it, then that will serve as a little bit of added organic matter actually once it deteriorates. Now we're placing soil all around the hole evenly here and filling it about a third full. And after we've done that, then we'll tap it slightly. We'll need to water it to settle that soil around, and then once the water has settled down, we'll come in and finish filling that hole up to where it's level or slightly depressed with the surface.
Transplanting trees and shrubs is really not that complicated, but make sure again that you get some help. Make sure you get your hole dug ahead of time.
And we want to thank Charles Stripling for helping us, because it really makes a difference when you've got another pair of hands in doing something like this.
We hope you've enjoyed this classic from the Oklahoma Gardening Vault. Remember, even though these tips and techniques are timeless, there's always something new to learn in the world of gardening. By subscribing to both Oklahoma Gardening and OK Gardening Classics, you'll have access to a wealth of gardening knowledge, both classic and contemporary.